What's happening, everybody? MG here, MGCovers, bringing you a brand new sports handicapping video. Title of this video is a review of my college football rankings that cashed 5 moneyline dogs yesterday in college football. We're going to dive into that. A lot of information. You're going to learn a lot about how to handicap college football in this video. Stay tuned. Before we do that, if this is your first time watching one of my videos, greatly appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel, giving it a like if you find value in the video. There is a ton of content on handicapping NFL, college football, so you get a lot of value for free simply by subscribing to the channel. If you want to follow me on all of the social media outlets, I am MGCovers, cover spelled with the Z. I put out a ton of content on Instagram storyline, things that I might not normally make a long video for. You'll see on my Instagram storyline, MGCovers, cover spelled with a Z. That's on Twitter as well. So let's dive into this video. This is absolutely a fascinating video. You're going to get a lot of value out of it. Before we do that, just to provide context to this video so that you will understand this and comprehend this a lot better, I want to talk about how the sports book sets their lines. This is true for any sport, and this is sportsbook review you see right here on the right, and over here on the left, these are my college football power rankings actual lines for last week. So while I'm talking, you can check that out. All right, so the sportsbook line, and this is why it's important to have your own statistical model as compared to just looking at the sportsbook line. The sportsbook line that a sportsbook makes or creates is a biased line. There is bias factored into that line. Now, the way that they create that line is, for example, let's use the Clemson Georgia Tech game from yesterday. They base their line on the public's perception of that team. And here's what I mean. If the general public believes Clemson will blow out Georgia Tech, what will that line look like? It's going to be a big number. And yesterday it was. It was Clemson. It ended up closing minus 27.5, right? So that's how they create a line. Hey, how is the public going to react to those two teams playing? Do they perceive Georgia Tech to be just a little bit better? Did they perceive Clemson to win in a blowout? The general public perceived Clemson to win this big in a blowout. That's why the line was 27.5. The problem with that line, that is a biased line. The difference from that line versus my line for all of my models are 100% statistically driven with no bias. Now, you might hear some people say, well, I create my own lines. I come up with my own lines. I look at it and go, well, Minnesota, Colorado. Colorado is good. Maybe they're not as good as Minnesota, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to put the line at even. That's a biased line. Okay, that's not a statistically driven line. You're actually creating bias in that line. A true line should come from your stat model without any bias. And what I mean by that is I have a mathematical calculated formula that I use. So when I type in A plus B plus C equals D, that's the actual line, absent of any bias, right? And so my lines will be more accurate than the sportsbook line. And our whole premise as a handicapper is to find value between my line and the sportsbook line where there are, quote, bad lines. So what I want to first do, keeping that in mind, is I want us to look at all of my college football power rankings. Now, what's interesting, too, to note, the difficulty in a model this early in the season, we have very limited data, right? The way that I calculated my lines did not include any stats from FCS schools. So some of these teams, you only have 1 week of data, but you're going to see how powerful this model is. So let's take a look at the first one there. First, I'm just going to show you the wins first. We scroll on here to Connecticut. Connecticut sportsbook line was plus 34.5. My line was plus 16.5. So value there with Connecticut. And let me show you this too, because I have to define what value is in college football. And this is the actual power rankings that my clients have access to. We just read this note For college football, I would like for teams with at least a 5-point differential. For example, if our line is -9, sportsbook line is -4, this game would be a potential play, which means there is a 5-point differential between my line and the sportsbook line. In that case, it would lean towards the 9. That game would have value there. All right, so 5 points generally what we look for. NFL, we look for about a 3-point differential. So the very first game, Connecticut there, that was a win. Next one, Minnesota, Colorado. Let's see if we can find this one here. Whoops, I went too far, my bad. Why can't I find this? My bad. Well, you can look at my line. Okay, there we go. My line was -7, Minnesota. We had Colorado as underdog. And check this out. Minnesota was +2 at the sports book. And Minnesota ended up huge blowout win there, 30-0. Next one, Nevada, Kansas State. Our line was Kansas State -10. We had Nevada +10. You can look at the sportsbook line, had Kansas State +1.5 and had Nevada as the favorite. And Kansas State wins in a blowout, 38-17. Next one was Georgia Tech, Clemson. Again, I referenced this at the beginning of this video. The public perceived Clemson to be about 4 touchdowns better, but in reality, they were not. And had a lot of fun with clients this week. You can look at that Georgia Tech line -10. A lot of clients laughed at that line, but the funny part is it was actually way more accurate than the sportsbook line, because that line that you see there, even though it looks weird to see Georgia Tech as a favorite, that's a statistically driven line with no bias. The line doesn't care about Clemson's past. The line doesn't care. My model doesn't care about the public's perception. It's just going to calculate that formula and give me an unbiased line. And I'm using stats that correlate to winning. That's very important. You can't just make up a stat model and say, okay, I got a stat model. No, it has to be a model that has proven to be successful in using the correct stats that correlate to winning. So again, Georgia Tech, 27.5. We had them at -10. They almost won that game, had a chance to at least tie it. Next one, if you scroll down, we had Wyoming -12.5. Ball State was +12.5. Yep, Wyoming was -6.5. So again, we had them at 12.5, 6-point differential, and they win big there in a blowout, 45-12. All right, next one to look at, East Carolina, Marshall. Mike Houston's one of my favorite coaches in college football. Just a great coach. Had success everywhere he's went to, and I think he'll do a good job at East Carolina. You can see here East Carolina was +10.5. Marshall -10.5. I think they were way overvalued. Again, biased line. What did my line have? East Carolina -5, Marshall 5. Now, granted, East Carolina had to come back to win that one, but they did. And then finally, the big one there, this is the one we actually wagered on the money line, Utah, San Diego State. The actual line was San Diego State at home +8. Isn't that crazy? Just a note, too, write this down. College football, home teams win 70% of the time, right? So if you ever see an underdog at home, definitely a play to consider, or at least handicap that game. Because again, that statistically speaking, that matters. That away team only has a 30% chance of winning. So it's a great opportunity to cash a money line dog, or even to take the points in certain situations, even though I would probably more than likely always play a home dog on the money line. And you can see my line was 13.5. Close game, very controversial ending, but they were up by 14 going into the fourth quarter. Utah made a nice comeback. And then finally, another nice one here, Oklahoma State, Boise State. Very difficult to beat Boise State at home. I do feel like they were a little overvalued in this one via my power rankings, of course. What was this game at? No, this game came on about, let's see if we can find it. Was it 7 o'clock? No, wait a minute. Oklahoma State, I can't find it. Just bear with me. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Oklahoma State was +4. Boise State was the favorite -4. You look at my power rankings, we had Oklahoma State -11.5. So let's look at this. So just using my power rankings and the games with value, we had a total of 8 wins, and we actually had 7 losses. So if you just the stat model itself with 0 handicapping went 8-7, 53%. So those of you that are looking to create models, a successful model, if you can get a model to 50% or better, that's a good model because you can handicap it to an even better percentage all the way up to maybe like 55% to make it very profitable. But what's great about this stat model, this is no handicapping, which means not looking at line movement. We're not looking at injuries. We're not looking at any other form, any other handicapping things that we should. The model itself, if you played all the games of value, went 8-7, 53%. Very impressive. Now wait till you see this part. So let's go over to what we talked about in the beginning of the video. So let's say hypothetically, and I actually teach this, if you look at what we're going to do is we're going to see our win-loss record, how much money we would make if we would have taken all of the games, all of the teams that I had favored via my power rankings, but they were underdog at the sports book. What would that look like if we played those teams on the money line? How many games we win, how much will we profit? So they have to be a favorite via my line and an underdog at the sports book. So the first one we're going to look at, Ohio. Of course, they lost, what was that, Friday night or Thursday night? Next one was Minnesota. They won. Virginia Tech made a comeback, but obviously lost. Kansas State, blowout win. Purdue, Notre Dame, too much for Purdue. They lost. Georgia Tech lost. Arkansas State lost to Washington, I believe. And again, this is just for illustration to show you how good these power rankings are. But in a realistic world, probably would not have played Arkansas State on the road at Washington. They didn't play similar competition, so more like just a paycheck game for Arkansas State there. And they lost. East Carolina obviously won. Just talked about that. Charlotte was favored via my power rankings, lost to Georgia State. And, of course, the big win there, San Diego State. Vanderbilt was favored via my power rankings, got blown out there by Stanford. And then, of course, the game with Oklahoma State and Boise State won. Now, so when you look at terms of win-loss record, this is important. We had 5 wins, handicapping that way, and 7 losses. So that comes to about a 42% win percentage of teams that won on the money line that were favored via my power rankings versus an underdog at the sports book. And when you look at that and say, well, 5-7, that's not good. Well, let's take it a step further. Let's actually calculate how much money we would have made wagering this way. Now, very important. When you play a team on the money line, you pay no juice. What I mean by that is if you lose that. Let's say if it's $100 is your unit size, you're wagering $100 a game, you lose 100, as opposed to playing it on the spread line where you lose 110, right? So you pay no juice when you play money line. So let's factor in all these losses. And so that's going to be a total of, whoops, messed up there. So this will be a total of $700, a $700 loss, okay? Now, let's go in and add in all of the money lines, right? For Minnesota was 114, Kansas was 105, East Carolina was 363. That was a huge one there. San Diego State was 280, and Oklahoma State was 160. Whoops. And Oklahoma State was 162. So now let's add all this up together, and you get $323, hitting 42% winners. That, my friends, is what I teach. That is the power of playing money line dogs. You can do this for any sport. I do this in college football. I do it in college basketball. And what you have to realize is too, you've heard, or if you watched any videos on sports handicapping, you've heard the old adage, you got to be 53% basically to break even in sports betting. And that's if you're playing all spreads, but to actually turn a profit, it needs to be higher than that to be profitable, right? Whereas if you incorporate playing a lot of money line dogs, I do this in NFL as well. You can see right there, you can go 5-7 and be up 3.23 units by incorporating money line dogs. Now, that's via the model. What I actually played yesterday, I played Virginia Tech. That was a loss, and I played San Diego State. Those were the two games that I picked. And there's a coaching video, really good coaching video I made. If you're a coaching client watching this, I explain in detail why I picked Virginia Tech, why I passed on a few of those other ones, and why I played San Diego State. Now, the great thing about doing it when you have two money line dogs, I only need to win one of those in order to profit, right? Whereas, let's say you played it the traditional way where you're playing Virginia Tech, taking the points, San Diego State taking the points. If you go 1-1, the quote traditional way, you're going to lose money because you'll win one. So you'll win 100. You'll lose the other one on the spread. That's minus 110. So you actually lose. Whereas this way, Virginia Tech, if you're wagering $100, you lose $100 Virginia Tech. You win 280 at San Diego State. You profit 180 going 1-1. So again, I teach this. I just think it's much easier. Well, it's just if you just think about it, it's easier to go 42% playing money line dogs than it is to go 55% playing all spreads. It's just a smarter way to play. And money line dogs cash in every sport. They cash in the NFL, they cash in college football, they cash in college basketball as well. And I've just shown you the proof there. Now, if you'd like access to these power rankings, this is exactly what they look like. It's $49 a month. You get access to this in addition to all of my coaching videos. I think we've made about 35 coaching videos just this year, plus videos I've made in the past. You have access to all that. This model will come out Monday for college football, and my very first week of power rankings for NFL will drop Tuesday morning. Should have those before 10 a.m. You get access to all of that. You can also ask me any questions if you're a client. If you want access to all that, in addition to all my plays for all sports, that is $99 a month, and you get access to everything on the site. And if you join for a solid year, that is the best value. You will learn a ton in a full year. You get about $600 off the $99 a month, and it comes to $499 for the entire year. You save $600. There's a link in the description box to join if you're interested in that. Hope this video helped. If it did, provided you some value, give it a like, and we will talk to you guys soon. Peace.